sister came from Greece, and every morning she'd like to have a soft-boiled egg, okay?
Yeah.
And so one morning she made 2 soft-boiled eggs, and she decided she'd only eat one. So she put it back in the refrigerator, but she wrote on it, so that everybody knows, this egg is boiled. So Tommy was living here, and there were 10 other eggs there, and he wrote, this egg is not boiled. This egg is not boiled.
So you could get yourself a quart of milk in the middle of the night if you wanted. It was a cold milk machine.
That's another thing. He doesn't want to be a corporation lawyer or to be making an awful lot of money, because he's interested in helping people at destitute or poor people and so forth, and that lives up to his to what he promised himself to do.
I didn't know where anything was, didn't speak Greek. We went out with him, we went to a restaurant, he's ordering in Greek. I'm like, this is heaven, baby. The dude's got a chunk of hash, he knows how to order food in Greece. I'm like, oh, what the heck?
The waitress, he said, Florence, that's your name? She said, yeah. He says, Florence, how's the meatloaf? Because usually I get indigestion. So he says, you know, my father makes it, but he makes delicious meatloaf. I never get indigestion.
We hesitated to say we'd see each other immediately. Of course, they said. Effie said, come on over. We've got a dinner here. And we said, oh, that's, we wouldn't interrupt. No, she said. We'll simply make the bowl larger.
Well, your dad had a sense of humor, which was actually funny. And it really enjoyed telling stories. So it was
What makes for a good story? Humor, tragedy, profundity, drama, or perhaps a combination of all 4? I'm a storyteller. I write stories. Tonight we'll listen to other storytellers as they tell stories and discover what makes for a good story.
Wow, really?
Just my brother Peter.
45 minutes.
Yeah, she was 45 minutes labor and from start to finish.
Wow.
And Peter, he was sleeping in the other room, and he had his camera. He's going to take movies and everything.
Oh, I remember this.
And I'm waking him up. Pete's time. You got to get up. And he, like 10 minutes later,
He's making the
he's
bed.
just making the bed. He's in there asleep. I said, "No, Pete, it's time now. Stop making the bed. Come on in." And so then he's in there, and he tells the story how he had his hands underneath. Dora had her butt off the bed, her hands on it, and Peter was there like,
I was like this, getting ready to catch it, and Nikki said, "What the hell are you doing?" I said, "I don't know, man. It looks like she's getting ready." I was thinking, we got time, Then the next thing I know is the midwife comes out and says, "If you want to take any pictures, you better get out here right now." So I went in there to get the picture. I take one picture, and I'm out of film. My camera's automatic, and it goes, it's making all this noise. These guys are like, "What's going on?" I was like, "My camera."
So you have to find some film.
So I quickly found some film. I said, "Hold on, Dora."
Dora held on.
Dora was like, "Oh,
I can't hold it much more, Pete."
I loaded up the camera, and I got it going. And the pictures I have are like amazing because Zoe's head is just this much out,
All of it's out.
And then
The whole head is sticking out.
It's incredible.
It's a China, looks like a China Bay China doll.
Father was fine. We got married, we lived in Chicago, and we got married in Brooklyn, right? We had the big formal wedding in Brooklyn. And we got all these presents from the relatives here and friends, and there are millions of presents.
And we lived in Chicago.
We lived in Chicago, so we couldn't take them with us, and we left them for the basement. They had a private home in Brooklyn, my mother and father. We left them there, and I get a letter from Stella. And Stella says, "Effie, take your wedding presents real fast because they're disappearing. They're going away. Father, whenever there was a wedding, we'll go down the basement, pick up one of our presents, and we'll give it away." And one of the things, which I think is very funny, we had a big set of pots and pans and stuff. So I understood. We left it there, and he takes them to Pittsburgh to Maria and Bill. As a present. And they were a wedding present.
Fortunately, Effie thought I was okay,
Yeah.
because if Effie didn't think you were okay, then things didn't go any.
She told me not to marry Peter, the guy that I took once to your house, but Stephen was okay. I could marry him.
That was got the Effie approval.
And that's when your little beastly dog Charlie, I'm up there going like this, getting ready for the shots for the catalog, and Charlie's chewing my feet. Charlie the dog.
He's a puppy.
Oh, with the sharpest teeth in the world.
The puppies.
And we got up on stage, and I remember an Uta Hagen thing, if you will, where it said, if you're nervous, play nervous. Like, let the nervousness influence, your performance. This isn't a legitimate show. So I thought, well, I'm nervous, so I'll play a nervous character. So I played a nervous character in my first scene ever, and it was funny because I was really nervous. So it worked out pretty good. And the more relaxed I got, I started playing more relaxed people. But a lot of times in the first scenes, I would play somebody overwrought or nervous because I was.
And soon Tom invited me to be in the jam, which at that time was held in a cute little space in the basement of a bar that smelled like vomit. It was good. It only cost $800 a week. And there were perks. We didn't have to shower because dishwater would rain on us during the course of the show. And we got to meet lots of people, angry, drunk people who were lost on the way to the bathroom. But I loved performing there every week for George and Effie and the guy sleeping. Sometimes if a drunk guy collapsed on stage, we just use him in the scene, and the sleeping guy slept, and it was fun. And every week George would run up and tell us it was the best show ever. And he was always wrong.
We were very close as a family. We had an odd habit, at least the three boys did, which was we called our parents not Mom and Dad, but George and Effie. And that seemed unusual to a lot of people. And one of George's friends asked me once, why do you call them George and Effie? And I said, well, until we were teenagers, we had to call them Mr. and Mrs. Soder.
I remember in the morning his getting up, and we're standing there in the old blue room in the commune house, and he's got his arm around me and his legs crossed like he does, with his hand on his other hip. And he announced to his family there, the commune family, that we were having an offspring. I always remember like this little coil or something that was going to be birthed, spring. It was funny.
Chris told me to come out of the First National City Bank at 112th and Broadway holding a gun above my head and a bag in the other arm, which I faithfully did. As I came running out of the bank holding a gun up, and I heard a voice say, "Hold it, stop." And it turned out it was a couple of policemen there. They didn't have guns drawn, but they were very concerned about what I was doing. I think they had a feeling we were just a bunch of kids, but I think today in 2009 I probably would have a bullet lodged in my chest for that.
After a little bit, I got to know Effie, and she said that I should come and visit at home. So I arrived at this magnificent apartment on Riverside Drive and met George and Tom and Nick, and it was great fun. I was most impressed and loved them dearly. And as the years went on, I was encouraged to read at night well, in the early years, just to Nick and Tom, because Peter hadn't arrived yet. And we read stories, but after a bit, Nick said to George, apparently, please not have Carol go on reading, because she reads crooked, meaning that the British accent was getting in the way.
He and I were engaged, we went to visit her aunt where her grandmother lived in Massachusetts. And I was being very charming and so forth. So in the morning, or dinner, I said that I'd like to make a toast. And grandmother knew some words. She says, toast. She says in Greek, wait, my dear, I'll get you a piece. And then the next 3 days we were there, every time we sat at the table, there'd be these pieces of burnt toast. That was my place. Cold burnt toast.
So one time he called me up in December 8th, and he said, I'm having chest pains. You think you could take me to the hospital? I said, okay, Dad, I'll come over and get you right away. I got a taxi, we took him to the hospital. When we went there, we stayed for 45 minutes. He said, look, I feel better now, let's leave. I said, no, Dad, we've been here for 45 minutes, this is stay. So we stayed, and he had a heart attack, a massive heart attack. He almost died. Luckily, he had the presence of mind to have a heart attack around 4 doctors. They all put him together, and he lived. He lived through the heart attack. It's traumatic for me. That was over 25 years ago. About 15 years later, he said, I'm having some chest pains. He called up Tommy. He said, Tommy, you could take me to the hospital? I'm having some pain. Tommy took him to the hospital. He had a heart attack on Tommy's watch. It's great. It's a wonderful thing that he did that. And that was a major heart attack. He really, the doctor said, wow, 90% of these kind of guys die. Your father's really lucky. He ripped his aorta. It was messy. But Tommy was there for him. 10 years later, Nicky's visiting. He said, Nick, I can barely breathe. You think you can take me to the hospital? We go to the hospital again. He has another heart attack. This time, he has a little stroke this time, you know. So I'm just trying to say, George was an equal opportunity dad. He wanted us all to help him. We did. We took him. We helped him.
Plan, and I ended up staying for a week, which allowed me to spend some time with George before I left. And when I arrived, he was quite sick, and I hadn't seen him in 9 to 12 months, and I hadn't expected to see him looking so fragile. And that was really hard. When I walked into the apartment and I saw him, I turned around and started crying because he just didn't look like himself, you know. He was really skinny, and he seemed all of a sudden to have turned into a very old man. And it was hard. But I was glad that I stayed that week because I could be close to him and take care of him a little bit. And when he was in the hospital, I asked him if he was afraid, and he said no. Also, I think he told me have a good trip, and I said thank you, you too. And he said, okay, I will, don't worry about anything. I said okay, and that was the goodbye. I felt like he knew that I was saying goodbye, and that he was also saying goodbye. He said I loved you, and I said I love you too. And
that's what this poem is about. When you set out on your way back to Ithaca, you should hope that your journey is a long one, a journey full of adventure, full of knowing. Have no fear of the Lastrygons, the Cyclops, the frothing Poseidon. No such impediments will confound the progress of your journey if your thoughts take wing, if your spirit and your flesh are touched by singular sentiments. You will not encounter Lastrygons, nor any Cyclops, nor a furious Poseidon, as long as you don't carry them within you, as long as your soul refuses to set them in your path.